My name is Kendall Dooley, husband to Erin.
And I'm Erin Dooley, wife to husband Kendall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is session 2 of talking about meeting with our sexologist, sex therapist for our premarital counseling.
Wow.
Yeah, session 2. There's like a total, I think, of 7 sessions where we had discussion.
Yeah. The first one was just like, this is what's going to be.
Yeah, the first one was just like,
paperwork.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Miss Renell.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. Are we allowed to say her name?
Yeah, I promoted her.
Okay, I wasn't sure because you looked at me.
No, I'm observing her.
You're just observing me?
This.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are 7 different sessions, right?
Yep.
That we talked through. And although she specialized in sex therapy, she did premarital counseling.
Yeah.
She's a big premarital counselor, too. And had done a lot of that, and so she had us take like this test, this exam. I'm sure we talked about that in our last video.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of just like the different sessions went through all this stuff from that test we took, different like talking points from that test. Like kind of just like told the health of our relationship and different spots like communication or different things that may finance discussions, all that stuff. And then she was like, man, let you guys tailor what you guys want to talk about. And so I'm sure those of you guys watching, like, when are they going to talk about, like, the sex from the sex therapist?
Yeah.
And so that was session 4 is really when we talked about that.
Really good memory. I know you have notes, but you also have a really good memory because I don't remember any of that.
Maybe that's why I'm facilitating.
Yep, that's why you facilitate,
bitch. But so that session 4, we really go deep into that. We talk about it in hints through all the other sessions. But so session 4, we go deep into that. Session 2, that we'll talk about today. At least for me, there are kind of like 3 different main highlights from there that we can talk about. Do you have any memories from session 2 before we talk about any highlights?
I'll just let the cat out of the bag. You make fun of me about this every time we bring up our memory of taking these premarital counseling sessions with Miss Renell. Is that I didn't take notes properly, so I don't know, I don't remember nothing.
And she called you out for it.
I mean, she just asked what I was taking notes on, and I was like pen and paper, but then I can't find my notes.
She was like, you want to take notes on your phone? You're like, I do, but I want to take notes on pen and paper.
Yeah.
And then she lost it. So I
can't find where I took the notes. But Kendall got them on his phone, yeah. It's not that I didn't care. I was thinking if I write it down, I'll remember it more, but obviously that did not work.
Yeah, it's okay, baby.
So anyways.
It's all in you. And I got it now.
With all of that being said,
if you have any troubles in our relationship, I got the note.
I ain't got nothing on session 2, so you're just going to have to remind me what happened in session 2, and then it'll probably jog my memory.
At the beginning of session 2, we're coming off of discussion of session 1 of creating like check-ins and all that stuff, checking in with one another.
Yeah.
And we're kind of continuing that from our session 1 combo. And so she used the word ritual of like creating rituals in our through our relationship of like times of checking in with one another.
Yeah.
Doing like fun stuff with one another, like dating stuff, and then talking about things that like our dreams, our fears, our concerns that we may have of like making that a routine. I'm kind of making like a ritual out of that. She used that word, which I like and we like, right? Because we're pastors and spiritual people, and so ritual is a big word. But then had talked about like how can we repair the rituals.
Prepare or repair?
Repair the rituals that we might plan or set, because a lot of this, right, was like, what's the game plan going into marriage, which we talked a lot about that. Now, last video, which I love, is that she made the point that a lot of times, even in like church or other spaces, they'll talk about like, this is what you do to prepare for life. Or there's always like in school has all these like classes on things that we don't really use later on in life, like math and science stuff.
Yeah.
But like not many places really prepare you for like marriage, where church sometimes gives you like different like suggestions and tools and all this stuff. But like there's a lack of like really preparation in our society for preparing people to be married. So it's like you guys have to create like a game plan going into it. So it's like what happens with the game plan we made of the rituals we set up of checking in with one another, dates and all that stuff. What happens, right, if that breaks? If stuff comes up in life, because things are always coming up in life, how to keep that a priority, us a priority. And she was talking about create an emergency plan and create a safety plan. She called it like disaster plan if other stuff comes up. In life that prevents our rituals that we set up that are for us. Yeah, that was like the first highlight and kind of like a big thing we talked about. I don't know how you feel like we've been doing at that.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. How do you think have we repaired rituals? I would say what comes to mind is our rituals have for sure been broken. Yeah, where we just fall out of rhythm because seasonally maybe our jobs are requiring more of us, or we just have something going on where we just are a bit, it's not a consistent rhythm. It's a bit inconsistent because of maybe a seasonal thing, like for neighborhood ministries with kids club, for example. Like during that season, our rituals are quite off just because it requires more of you, of us in that other space. And so, but I think that we've done a really good job of when we're feeling depleted or not seen or not heard, or just of finding space, even if it's like 10 minutes, to be really honest about how we're feeling. Why are you smiling?
I'm smiling because this is kind of relevant or recent because you didn't feel that way last weekend. You used the word depleted when we're at the retreat.
You used the word.
I said you just used it now.
Oh, yeah.
You just used it right now.
Yeah.
And so I was saying, because you used that word and what you're saying, it made me think of this event of last week when we were at the retreat. We were at a prayer retreat. And we were talking about what people were asking us what we need prayer for. And so I talked about feeling depleted. And you were like, I feel like I didn't know that. And you were all.
Because I was telling you.
You're all sad.
Well, listen, just context. Oftentimes when Kendall, you're really good about asking me, how are you feeling, babe? Like, I want to know how you think and feel, even if he can't fix it, even if he may disagree with it or whatever. How I feel really matters to him. And so I try to reciprocate that or do my best to also care about how you think and feel. But sometimes I feel like when I ask you, you don't be saying you don't be saying what you say in front of other people. At least that's how I felt at the time.
You're laughing because you're laughing because you know what the truth is. I told her that because I told her I was depleted, and then I told her I was depleted, and she thought I was talking about sex, and was like, "Whew, yeah, you sure did last night." She thought I was talking about sex. When I told her I was depleted.
So I dismissed it because I thought it was a joke, but he didn't say no, but I'm actually like talking about my life.
No, because I was kind of at that point, I was like, okay.
And then we went to the Daniel Initiative retreat. Everybody's praying for one another. They asked him what his prayer request is, and he was like, man, the word that comes to mind is just depleted. I was like, oh my God, how do I not know that? I'm supposed to be your wife and partner. I don't even know how you really feel. I was so distraught. I was like, I'm not a good partner. Like, what is happening? How is it? There was some other time where I felt like maybe you had said something more honestly with other people than to me, which this instance, now that we know that it's false in its existence, but this instance furthered that narrative in my head of like, what is it? Am I making you not feel safe or whatever? Turns out he did tell me that. I just thought he was joking. But he was like, I'm feeling depleted, and it's like my locks, like Samson, like my locks are being cut off. And I was like, oh my God, babe. Woo! And so we talked about it for a little while that night and also the next day a little bit. It took me a minute to kind of come out of like, are you sure you're okay? Or like, how do we fix you feeling depleted? Because I don't love, that's not how I want you to live. Like, I don't want either of us to live always feeling depleted or like we don't have capacity. And then we went to this conversation about capacity. We don't even have capacity to really care for ourselves or to give ourselves the opportunity to do things that rejuvenate us or that we love or that bring us like life and like a refreshing type of feeling. Yeah. And if we don't have space to do that, then our capacity is already overmaxed and maxed out. So we were talking about that. And just by reflecting on long term what we want to do with our lives. All that being said, in the general sense, besides that one incident, I do feel like we do a good job of checking in, even if our rhythm of the check-in is off. At some point, we're checking in on how are you doing, how are you feeling, and then offering like honest critiques about how each other is moving through our lives at that point, or maybe like offering another perspective to look at. And so when we're talking about repairing rituals on that highlight, I think we're doing pretty good with that. Like this is another thing that Miss Rennell said. That
look
stuck
at you
with us.
remembering.
I know, right? I think we talked about it in the first session, though. But it's the religion. Like you're creating a religion of you. What's the religion of us as a partnership as people?
I'll jump on here.
I know. Was that part of this one too? Session 2?
I don't know. I don't think she named it yet.
Okay.
But
at some point,
giving us breadcrumbs.
Yeah. At some point, she talks about that, and to the point of that, it's like even Kevin on stage has said this before. It don't got to work for anybody else but y'all two. Like, it doesn't matter if it works or doesn't work for everybody in the world, but what works for you guys and us finding space to check in and have honest conversations. If that's the car ride between here and Sedona, or if that's like we got home, had dinner, and before we watch a show together or a movie together, we're spending 30 minutes. And I'm just crying because I'm like letting out how I'm feeling about something. I'm trying to process something or whatever, and you're just holding me. That's like a check-in, like what are you processing? Also, too, I feel like because I've been in a consistent rhythm of therapy, being able to share those reflections with you have been really interesting too. But I don't want to go too much into that because I don't want to veer off this. But at some point, I'd like to bring that up too. But
yeah.
Those are mine.
Well, that kind of goes to the second point, but I think before we move on to the next highlight that you kind of hit on a little bit already, before we move on there totally, to bring it back to what messed up our rituals and stuff is I blame the hernia, right? Because if you remember, we had a good rhythm of we wake up in the morning, go to the YMCA, work out, and then we would check in then in the morning. All that stuff. We had a very kind of intentional rhythm.
Yeah, come back, have breakfast, get ready for work.
Yeah, all that stuff. But then when I had my hernia.
But you had that May 11th and the surgery.
Well, the surgery was May 11th, but it was, we stopped working out.
Right, yeah, we did.
Because of my hernia. That was like September or something.
Yeah,
of last year. Was when, we stopped working out even before we got married. In September of last year. And so because of that kind of like threw off our rhythm. And got a hernia. And we never like intentionally made up like another plan, as she talks about the emergency plan or disaster plan if stuff like that happens. Which is exactly what happened. A hernia thing came up. But we weren't intentional enough to create like a plan around it. But we still valued it.
Right.
And so, like you said, it still shows up because it's still a value of ours to do that and to check in with one another and and especially of mine, like you said, I'm always like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Right.
I mean, it's a value of mine and ours that we just kind of consistently do it sporadically. We sometimes still do it in the morning. So when we have time with one another, it's in the morning or after like your therapy session or something big just happened to us. I feel like, I mean, we're always running to tell each other stuff when something happens, something big happens at work, or something happens to you. It's like, oh, I'll tell Erin when I get back, or you're like, I'll tell Kendall when I get back home. And so I think kind of sporadically happens, without that much intentionality.
Yeah.
But it's because we both value it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I don't know. I wonder what Miss Winnell would say about that. Right. Looking back on it and see what she would say about that. Like, I wonder if she works with couples and people who like don't value that. And so they have to intentionally do it. And then they just become roommates because they don't actually are checking in with one another or doing dates or doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Any of the ritual stuff. And they just become roommates. Where I feel like, especially early on in our marriage, where it's still like the honeymoon feeling of being married the first year and all that stuff.
Right.
Where it's just something that we value still. But yeah, I mean, the roadblocks that you talked about is like busy and all that stuff too, with like work. I mean, she hit on that stuff too and talked about that. I've talked about like busy is a mistress. She said like busyness can be like a mistress, kind of like lure you away. And then she kind of talked about like busy is not being productive, right? Like when you view this holistic way of living life as being productive, it includes all the facets of your life. And I think you hit on that when you talk about capacity. Yeah. It's like knowing your capacity allows you to be productive, to kind of kill it at everything that's on your plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, busy will kind of just keep you scattered and keep you around. And so she kind of hit on that too, about busy being a mistress that gets us away from those rituals too, which you've probably seen some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My comment on like busyness is a mistress is that's where boundaries with whatever's keeping us busy have to be set. And I think this was something that came up in therapy for me, is like early on, or it's still early on, but at some point I was feeling some type of way about feeling like we were planning to do something, or we were going to do something, or I was expecting you to come home or have dinner together or whatever. And that expectation wasn't met because something came up from neighborhood that I didn't know about, or you didn't know about, or whatever, whether it's picking up kids, or there's an extra event on the weekend, or I got to take them up for this weekend, so I'm not going to be home, or something like that. And it was like feeling some type of way about it. And my therapist, Dr. Shantae, was reminding me that what's happening and what you're seeing happen is your own boundaries with your partner are being crossed, and you're also watching your partner's boundaries be crossed by the organization that he's employed by. So you're like, he's mirroring for you your own lack of boundaries with him. Like, because I haven't said anything, or we haven't talked about it, or made like our boundaries clear, which I think that kind of slowly catapulted us, / even more so, I don't want to speak for you, but catapulted us into defining what is productive and what is busyness, and what are the boundaries that we want to protect in order to keep our capacity at a healthy level, so that we also have time to have dinner together, that we also protect our time to date or go spend time with good friends like the Lawrences, right? Like, we just want to hang out with people that we love, but if we don't have the capacity for that, then busyness, the mistress of busyness, has crept in too far. And I think that that's not always the easiest thing to do, but it is like, oh, okay, that's a thing we got to work on and figure out together, which was helpful for me. Just hearing that in therapy, and then being able to carry it into conversation with you and our partnership.
Which I think, I mean, that's always the battle of life, right? Figuring out time and all that stuff, what you give time to, and all of that. And I feel like I'm learning more and more of just the importance of time, where you want to put it with where you're at in time in life, right? Like, we're this old, this young in our marriage, like as we get older, right, we have less energy to do things or to hear out things. So it's like while we're fresh to say where do you want to spend time and all that stuff, you know. But that was all the first highlight.
That was good, babe. You're doing a good job.
Thank you, babe. You too. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
The second highlight is the
check.
She talked about
hold on, babe. Don't talk for a sec. Check. 1, 2. Just want to make sure it was coming. The signal was coming through. Okay, go ahead.
Feeling good, babe. Checking out the audio. What I was gonna say is the second highlight was this, and then I'll explain what she meant. She said, brain dump what you hear about relationships or what people say about marriage.
Yeah. And
so that basically kind of hits on what you were saying. And she was kind of feeding us breadcrumbs to lead up to the religion of us, saying, and I remember this, she was saying this because I think I remember us talking about like, in like Christian spaces. I think I even remember we were going to a marriage thing that Impact Church hosted on that your parents spoke at. We were going to like some marriage talk hosted at a church, white evangelical church in Scottsdale. And so in that space, I think we were talking about like how in different church and Christian spaces, it's like talked about like, this is what marriage is, this is what it isn't.
Yeah.
And like, you had even talked about like purity culture and that's impact on you. And just this understanding light of like marriage and relationships and all that stuff, dating and all of that, that was passed on to us directly or indirectly from some Christian church spaces. And so she'd said like everything you hear are like early on in marriage too. Like sometimes people want to give you advice.
Yeah. And
people further on want to give you advice. And she's like, everything that you guys hear, like brain dump that with one another. And said like, like if I hear something from a friend and he's like, man, like marriage has got to be like this or that. He's like, brain dump that to your wife and say like, hey, I heard this and that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And we kind of just process it together, as our relationships. Right. And like, I know even earlier on in our relationship, this words, might be a lot to explain your viewers who don't know it, but like a complementarian, egalitarian relationship, basically to saying like, man, do you believe women are capable, and able to be like in a leadership type role in a relationship, right? Or is the man always the head? And so that was something like that's sometimes stuff you hear in church and Christian spaces. Is like the man's the head of the household, all this stuff.
Yeah.
The man has to lead.
And the woman submits to her husband.
Yeah.
And what she wants is secondary to what he wants. And he's leading the family and the future of the family.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not like for some people's relationships, right? That's not wrong. And it's fruitful for them and they've, been able to flourish and exist in that space. But she was just saying like stuff like that. You hear things like process that with one another. Like, hey, what do you think about that, wife? And like talk about it one another for us to become our own thing,
right?
Together. Like we're not trying to reflect or mirror, what other people are doing, but we'll take in info that might be good info, that might be good advice. Even she was saying, even the stuff that I'm telling you guys during the therapy session, she was like, talk about it with one another after and be like, hey, what do you think about her saying this? What do you think about her saying this? Yeah. And all that stuff. I think I think that's a good role of counselors and therapists is that they're not really telling you what to do or how to live your life or what our relationship needs to be like.
They're just guiding. They're
kind of guiding. They may have like different nuggets of wisdom that they offer, but then she was even saying with that, like, but then you guys talk about that as a couple,
right?
Like, is that something that we want to apply to who we're trying to be and what we're trying to do? Yeah. Was like the second highlight.
Yeah, I feel like we've done a pretty good job of that. In our existence together, we're definitely on the egalitarian side. which is just embodied in even our like careers, right? Like Kendall is a pastor at Neighborhood Ministries, and I am also a pastor at Kaleo Phoenix, which is unique in and of itself, but it's also very unique to be in a marriage where you are in a lead role of a church that your husband also goes to. And I feel like depending on what your worldview is and biblical worldview is around women and men and ministry, that might really negatively impact people. But because we do see ourselves as equal to each other and we equally support each other, and more than anything, I think me being in more of the cultural vulnerable spot because women shouldn't, based upon certain Christian views or religious views, that women shouldn't lead. But you let me lead, not like let me lead, but you want me to lead. There's support on your side of this partnership of like, no, you have a voice, you lead, like what your thoughts are important and you follow that, and vice versa. And because I think we complement each other, I was like thinking that complementarian was egalitarian. Can you just define those really quick for people, just to not be confused? Because I just got the words confused.
Well, I'm using this as I was using this just as an example.
I know, but
to talk about us, but I can
just quickly do it.
I can quickly define.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, complementarian means, and again, neither one of them are like bad or like, oh, this is, it's just whatever works for your relationship. Complementarian says that that you guys are equal, right, in value, that you guys are equal, but you guys complement one another, meaning that you guys have two different roles. There's different roles that are played. And so like typical sometimes spaces will be like the woman has the more nurturing role and caretaking role.
Takes care of the house.
Yeah, it takes care of the house, all that stuff. Well, the guy's role is more of like leader, setting the vision, protector, all that stuff. And it's like kind of the two roles that are given. Well, egalitarian kind of like removes that and just says like there's equal in value and they're equal in roles too. Like there's no specified roles that are given. That's not to say that there's one role that one another person might be strong in, might be stronger in. It doesn't negate that. Egalitarianism doesn't negate that. But it just says like everyone's able to practice whatever roles or gifts or whatever things they have in them. They're able to practice that and to live in that. Yeah, it's kind of probably a quick and easy way to explain it.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. So all of that being said, I think that we have done a good job of just like, hey, like so-and-so said this, like, what did you think about that? It's like kind of different, huh? Like, I know that we don't operate that way, but this is kind of my thought on how maybe believing something that way might play out this way, or maybe that's why this has worked for them in this situation and why that doesn't work for us, and the long-term not benefits, but the long-term implications of practicing that type of ritual in a partnership, marriage, relationship type of thing. And so just being able to talk about it together, I think has been helpful. And I do think that we've done that, especially when we hear something, we're like, ooh, what'd you think about that?
Yeah, which I actually haven't really noticed. I feel like since we've been married, even before, of people, I remember being a college kid, being part of a campus ministry, and got a lot of like relationship, dating advice, and kind of like instruction on what and what not to do.
Yeah.
I remember that in like college. I was a single pastor as a time. And so I remember getting kind of like some thoughts from other pastors and leaders of kind of how to operate during that time. But I feel like since being with you, I haven't really gotten much like advice I haven't gotten much. It's less. I'm trying to think. When's the last time
somebody gave you advice?
Someone's giving me advice like on marriage or relationships.
Like, nah, they ain't gonna work with her, bro.
No, I got nothing. I got nothing for you for that.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think part of it is like being married to you and like being with you, and like some of the things, right, that you're vocal about, right, on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
Before we were married, kind of set, I think, probably in public perception's mind and people's minds of who you were and who you are, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, anything that I'm saying is probably gonna be different from what maybe they're trying to be. I think people already might know that. That's maybe why I've gotten less advice.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean,
they can see who I am.
Yeah, the moment I'm thinking of in my head, now I'm saying that, it was a meeting with pastor of the church I used to work at. And he was kind of like a little like confused, right, by us and like dating, right, and all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's like that's, and I feel like he couldn't, I think he was trying to like make sense in his head of like, okay, you date with this person,
is she controlling you?
Yeah, that's right.
Is she manipulating you?
Is she controlling you? Is she manipulating you?
Because she's saying things and you're starting to say things that don't align with the way that I think you should be behaving.
Yeah. And so it's like stuff like that.
I know white supremacy when I see it. I hope you're watching this.
And so a pastor had said that, like, is she controlling you? Is she manipulating you? Well, I feel like the kind of like, well, hands off, let me not say anything about this. And not that to say it's like, I don't think either of us are like, no one can tell us anything about a marriage. It's like, I welcome pieces of wisdom. Yeah. Like I want to learn from people too that I especially admire their relationships. Right. Like I want to take in that stuff.
I agree.
It's not like I'm like, oh, we can't hear anything. I just feel like I've heard less of that. I feel like people are kind of like, oh, you guys kind of just do your thing. Yeah. 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 But so I still feel like, though, when we meet with couples though, I'm trying to think of this. I remember feeling this feeling, but I can't remember the exact scenario.
What was the scenario? Or,
the feeling was like when we sometimes meet with couples and I think they talk about relationships, I always feel like we sometimes feel like we hide a little bit, like how we like, not who we, I mean, maybe you could say that who we are, but we hide sometimes like what we think about that thing. Yeah. Or we hide like, how we navigated that thing to not be like off-putting or maybe not to scare people, maybe type thing.
I would even phrase it.
You know what I mean?
I would phrase it differently. I would say that that's one way of saying it, but I would even say not that we hide it, but we're just like, I guess poker face is not the word, but it's more of like non-judgmental, no matter what you say or how maybe you're sharing with us the way that you've navigated your relationship or what you did or didn't do before you were married, before you got engaged, when you were engaged, after you got married, whatever. It's kind of like, it's non-judgmental and we're receiving just the information. But we're not like saying, hey, that's not what we did and that's not right. We're not judging them for their story.
Oh,
and
that's
then
what some people do.
Yeah. And we're not judging them because our story is different than theirs. We're just like, I feel like we make space for all ways of being together. Yeah. And then we're just really sure of ourselves and how we've operated up until this point. And we just know that might adapt and change over time, but we are, like Miss Ronell says, creating the religion of us, right? Yeah. And so I just feel like we're a bit more non-judgmental in that. Because I think sometimes other couples might sit in front of other couples and they might say what they did or didn't do, what they are doing, blah, 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 how they operate. And other couples that might be more not egalitarian, but even just evangelical, or just like have grown up in a certain way of practicing faith, maybe operate with some Christian nationalism, some Christian supremacy, even like this is the way you're supposed to practice your faith, or even like in that kind of
antebellum era that I was reading about in that book. Like women should behave this way, you know, in the 1920s and 30s, that kind of trickled its way into the way that people practice their faith, especially women. Did you say 1800s? Yeah. Okay, 1800s. But anyways, like, I think that other people might be like, oh man, are you sure about that? Like that wouldn't work, or that's not really what God says that you should do, or that's not how really you should be operating. Like, are you sure? Like, don't you know this, and this? And would be a bit more judgmental. But I just don't see God as that way. I don't see God as like, everybody has to practice their faith a certain way and being supreme in the way that people express their faith and their love for Jesus and all of that. So I've personally like let go of this ideal way of being in the world, which I think causes so many problems in so many other areas of life. Mm-hmm. And because of that, what you described as like hiding ourselves, I just see it as like non-judgmental. Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. Because it's not like we're not being genuine. If they asked us, we would say it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's not anything like what you're talking about. And you might then feel a little bit awkward, you know, but hey, we can still break bread with you, and we can still like share a table with you and still like love and show up as our full genuine selves. That's Howard Thurman. A better way to put it. Yeah. It talks about being fully genuine or sincere, being fully sincere. But anyways, that's just like a little commentary on that. But I know what you're talking about, and I agree. I would just use a different word than hiding. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a better word. I think I like yours more. Sounds better. That's why we're partners. Yes. That was a good second highlight, though. Anything else on that one? Nothing I can think of. Yeah, I think I said there's a lot of points and stuff that we talked about. Yeah. Say the second highlight again. Let me just make sure I don't have anything else. So brain dump what you hear about relationships or what people say about marriage. Mm-hmm. And then I put comma, what do you think about this, wife? Yeah. Yeah. So like go back and to your spouse. I'm like, what do you think about this thing I heard? Yeah. And just to like go into it a little bit, some of our views that are different than other people that might be around us or spaces that we've grown up in. I would say more so me than you, because I was in more white evangelical spaces most of my growing up years. But like purity culture, which is, if I could paraphrase it, for me, my experience with purity culture is that you can't even think about sex. Don't even think about boys. Watch the way that you dress. You must be holy and present yourself holy before the Lord and before men. And if you're not getting picked, it's your fault. It's like this obsession with holy living that equates how pure you are, and how pure you are determines if you get picked or don't get picked in this like Christian world of dating. But then even when you date, don't hold hands, don't touch one another, don't kiss, don't do anything, don't think sexual thoughts. Hopefully you eventually get engaged, then you get married, and then the bed, what is it? The bed is undefiled. Yeah. Like, what is that? There's something, I'm missing some words, but you said that. The bed is undefiled once you get married, right? So it's like, wait a minute, like, that's a little bit toxic and traumatic, you know? And so there's a lot of nuances and ways that type of ideology plays itself out in the way that people practice their faith and the way that they enter into a relationship that I've had to deconstruct in therapy, and just like understand where all of that is coming from and how roots of that is tied up in not trusting myself, not trusting the Spirit of God in me even, and having to learn how to trust myself again, and learn how to trust the Lord that lives in me, and learn how to trust myself with you, and not be afraid of having sex before marriage, or the shame that comes from all of that too, is tied up in the way that certain couples that have been married for a long time perceive that you should or shouldn't operate as a couple being married. Even people's thoughts about pornography, masturbation, like a lot of it is shame rooted, to be honest. And so, but that takes a lot of time and deep work to deconstruct that and figure out where for yourself you want to reconstruct your ideology in relationship to your faith, Jesus, the Bible, God, and how you want to relate to one another. Yeah. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of work to do that. I mean, like, I was consistently in therapy since July 2020. It's now August 2022. You know, like that stuff takes time, and you didn't grow up in purity culture. And so like figuring out how to deal with that, work through that, deconstruct that, and then also share with you my experiences and what I've been brought up in and what I'm trying to let go of. And then simultaneously figure out how together we're going to relate to one another in our dating, engaged, and married relationship with one another, mostly without shame, because I cannot express enough. A lot of that is just rooted in shame. Anyways, that was a long rant, but essentially, yeah, that's just a more contextual, tangible example of how that was played out for us. Yeah. I'll take a water on that.
I feel like the third point, the last highlight, kind of feeds off the second one too, which is kind of it's being on the same page. To just try to be on the same page of like, again, the stuff that we're hearing from other people are different things. Like to be on the same page. And then she said, even when talking to others in private. So like the person giving me advice, whatever, on marriage, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not talking to them saying like, yeah, she's really bad at that. Like a person coming to me talking about women being the nurturing or caretaker role, but not a leader role. I'm like, yeah, my wife, she's really bad at that. Like I don't talk about and process it with them, with him, but I bring it to you, and like we have to be on the same page about it. Yeah. Instead of me like bad mouthing you or saying something's wrong with our relationship. Yeah. And probably like the first person to hear something that's bad about our relationship or struggles we're having about our relationship is one another. Yes. Not like someone going to someone else first and like private, like, no, we got to be on the same page on this. And like both of us too, we want to be vulnerable and open to people, especially as we pastor people, counsel people, and we are up on and preach or teach to people. Like we want to be vulnerable in different spaces and be real with other people, but it's like we also like we want to be on the same page. Right. With all of that.
I think that's a good point, and I think it protects our trust within each other. And it does. I think when you start to share with other people before you share with your partner, you're like kind of I hate to use the word threesome, but like there's this other party that's also married to you.
I think she may have even said something like that.
Yeah, like I
inviting someone else into the marriage.
Yeah, like anybody else that you're talking with before your partner is like now a part of this processing of whatever it might be in the marriage relationship and partnership. And so yeah, it's like I might say things to Chris as we're processing things about life together, but it's nothing I've said to him that I haven't processed with you. Chris is who I work with. He married us. He's good friends with Kendall. He's a good friend of mine. And he's also the person I co-pastor with. But like nothing that he's heard isn't something that we've already talked about and are processing together. And so it's like, yeah, I would definitely say I'm really careful about who I share things with. And more so, even when if I do say something, particularly to Chris, because he's really the only other one that I can think of offhand that I personally say anything to, is like just like kind of processing and reassuring that I'm even behaving in the healthiest way possible, or maybe like, am I not seeing something, or are we not seeing something collectively? Because he has his own relationship with you too, you know, and he's holistically, I think, a pretty healthy person too, and has done a lot of work on whiteness, racism, and just psychology within his own mental health too. So he's an opinion that I would hear and still receive with a grain of salt. Even that, right? Like even that is still a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are married to each other, you know? So that's another just practical, contextual example of like how that plays out for me personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, like you said, you want to be more protective. I feel like when dating, again, I feel like I don't really hear much advice or things right now. But I feel like when dating, I felt more comfortable, which maybe was a bad thing. I don't know. But I felt more comfortable when dating to be able to like talk about any issues or anything that I felt like was going on. I felt like comfortable talking about that with my trusted friends or mentor or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I think I even did right before we even dated.
Yeah. Before we were officially dating.
Before we were officially dating, right? I would process and talk with some of my friends like, this girl, this and that. Like, I don't know. What do you like? And then like I brought you to all these date spots, right? With these different friends and people of mine.
Saying that I wasn't your girlfriend, but basically telling them that I was, but you didn't tell me that.
I didn't tell you my girlfriend. I said, we're trying to figure out what we were.
Yeah, that's another story, but go ahead.
That's another podcast. But yeah, I don't mean that there's like, I feel like, I don't know if that's good or bad again when dating, but then I feel like when you're married, when you cross that bridge of marriage, it is like, it is us, right? And us against the world type of feeling, and like us as a team. And so it's like, I want to be on the same page with you first and be going to you first with different things. If issues arise or things are coming up, I'm like, man, let me process and talk about with Erin first. And that way too, it's like, I know it's like sometimes, and it's cliche, right? In like spaces, that's all guys or all girls to like maybe complain about the wife, like, she won't let me go out and do this. Or, that's kind of like a thing we'll see in public, like either media or real interactions, kind of like
it's like finally I have a place to vent. It's kind
it's kind of like, exactly. It's like, I mean, like the boys' locker room, right? Type thing is like, I got a place to vent about all this stuff, where I don't feel like, I don't feel like a need to do that with them. It's like, I'm not running to that space, because it's like, I just talk and process stuff with you. But then like, if there's anything that I do share in that space, like it's something that we've already talked about. We're on the same page. Like they can go to you.
Right.
It's not like, how things get sticky is probably stuff you see in watching your Real Housewives of Atlanta show, where like one part of the couple, one person says this to somebody, and the word gets around, and then it gets back to you, of like, like apparently I'm not this enough, or I'm not that enough, because he and she told, like it got around to me.
Why aren't they telling me? Why are they telling everybody else?
Instead of us just talking, exactly, the word on the street, instead of us just talking about it, like it comes around to her. I told this person, then word got out, type thing, where because we're on the same page on stuff all the time, I feel comfortable enough to like be talking about maybe issues or things that we might be having in different safe spaces among other guys. But I know that like if it gets back to you, you're like, I already know that, because we're talking about that.
Talking about it, working on it,
through
it. Yeah.
Like I can go
ahead.
Like I can talk to neighborhood people and be like, hey, like, I don't know, I can't do this event. Like my wife and I are figuring out boundaries, like all of this stuff that we've already talked about and processed with one another. And it's not like word gets back to you of like, Erin's like super this and that, or she doesn't want, like, it's none of that, because we're on the same page about that.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. I think there was something I was going to say, but it slips my mind, but I think that was really good commentary on that. Was that the last highlight?
That was the last highlight. Wow. Yeah. And I think,
good job, babe. Session 2.
We did session 2.
Way to go, facilitating.
I don't know if we would do all up to session 7. I don't know what the plan is.
You just keep facilitating like you are.
If we're gonna do all the sessions, or if we're gonna combine some together.
Well, it depends on your notes, because I ain't got none. So it depends on your notes.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All my notes are pretty girthy with each session.
I think you took pretty thorough notes.
The last, I think, few sessions is then like we honed in and talked specifically about like finances and sex.
Mind you, we were going through this months before we got married, so the financial part was warped into the wedding planning piece and like what we were paying for the wedding, which is a whole nother thing, which I think that set up even my own feelings about money in our relationship, in addition to my own financial experiences growing up.
Which was a note she had. I mean, it sounds like finance was something we talked about the whole way through because it's such a thing.
Yeah, it
for you. Because she even during that session too, there was a note saying view financial discussions as sexy and view it as intimacy.
Ooh,
so I don't know what that is.
I
don't know what that one was about. I think she was referencing during our ritual times and when we meet up.
Yeah,
and check on stuff. Like, don't be afraid to like talk about finances and hit it that. And so view it as another form of like intimacy and getting to know one another deeply.
Yeah. Instead
of like shying away from it. That's what I think. I can't remember fully though. But yeah, I think that's weird. View financial discussions as sexy.
Maybe, I don't know if I would view the financial discussion as sexy, but maybe, hey, we get to talk about our life together and what we're building and what we're doing, what we're working on together.
Finances included in that.
That itself is the intimate, sexy part, not the, hey, do we pay this thing yet? Are we going to pay this thing? Are we going to do that or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun to think about stuff we're going to do that we do have to pay for that's fun. Like going to Rocky Point or going to Florida.
Yeah.
Or going to the CCDA conference in North Carolina or going to the Woman King premiere opening, Viola Davis, going to Wakanda Forever, opening night. Like that's going to be fun. Like that stuff.
Yeah.
Which we have to pay for is fun and sexy and intimate to me because it's like an experience. Was that part of session 2 or is this another session? Did you say it was part of
that? Yeah, she said that was part of session 2.
I was starting to feel like we were giving them too much, but I
it's part of session 2.
That part is fun, and it's really fun to have something fun to experience and make memories together to look forward to. Wait till we get into what was that thing we were supposed to make that we never made? The
like
mission.
Kind of the story of us.
Yeah, the story of us, which includes like I don't think she called it our mission statement. What did she call it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
That's basically what it is, mission statement.
Yeah, like what you're about.
Vision for family.
Yeah, vision. Yes, all that type of stuff. Wait till we get into that, because I think somebody wrote it down. I hope I still have a note on it. Remember we wrote the words down when we were traveling somewhere?
Yeah. And I still have all the notes for everything that we talk about. Okay. I don't know about you.
I know. I don't know about me either. But wait till we get into that. That's going to be fun to talk about because regardless of the fact that we have not yet put it in an actual book to commemorate, I think we've been living it out really well, which will be fun. That's another session though. But thank you guys for joining us for session 2 of our reflections on our meeting with the sexologist.
If you're here just to talk about the sex and want to learn about that,
that's session 4.
Hold on to session 4.
Yes.
Hold on for
but this
another couple
is
sessions.
Really valuable too.
But it's good. Yeah, you get to you're in a relationship, take a part of it and figure out if you want it to be part of the relationship or the religion of you guys. You said, and it's good too if you're single. And we also ponder and think about.
We also threw in for free the depleted story, so that was a little sexy.
You think so? That was a little addition.
A little PG-13.
Yeah.
Type of talk.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Maybe not watch this be above 13.
Whew, all right, let's go because I have other stuff I could say, but. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Talk to you later.
See y'all next time. Bye.